All right, so let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashley Cruz, and I'm the Events and Engagement Associate here at the Mental Health Foundation. Before we begin, the Mental Health Foundation would like to acknowledge that what we call Alberta is the traditional and ancestral territory of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, who for generations lived on and cared for these lands. Our work takes place on historical and contemporary Indigenous lands, including the territories of Treaty 6, 7, and 8, as well as a portion of the Métis homeland, including regions 1 through 6. Since we're in a virtual environment today and we literally have attendees from all over, I would also like to acknowledge that no matter where you're tuning in from, we offer respect and gratitude for the land. So now I'm just going to get right into it, and I'm really excited to turn it over to our platinum sponsor, Ellis Dawn, who we're thrilled to have on board for our entire 2024 Lunch and Learn series. It's our dedicated partners like Ellis Dawn who make these events possible. So Barry, please take it away.
Thanks, Ashley. Yes, we, Ellis Dawn, are extremely excited to be a part of this event and be a part of the entire series. So for those of you who don't know much about Ellis Dawn, we are a construction services company, a national Canadian founded company that was rooted originally in Canada, out east. We were formed in 1951, and since then have grown from 2 brothers to 5,000 employees strong. We operate across the world, primarily in Canada, but across the world. And we've got an annual turnover around $5 billion now. So we've got many, many employees, especially in the construction industry, that are impacted by mental health and the challenges and the situations that they have to face through work, through their families. So it was extremely important for us to be a part of an event like this and to get the opportunity to represent not only our local Edmonton area here in division and all of the members of our community, but for the Ellis Dawn family on a national kind of basis. So it's my privilege to introduce the 2 ladies who will actually do all of the work on this webinar series today. Our presenters, Aneesa Gill and Cathy Mercier, are Health Promotion Facility advisors here with the Mental Health, Alberta Health Services. And both of them have got experience, a lot of experience, which they're going to get into and talk about and share really kind of a collaborative, interactive approach here to mental health and how they can facilitate this for you here today. Aneesa is specifically a registered social worker supporting adults and older adults who face mental health and addiction challenges. And Cathy brings experience in providing community support and psychological materials to children, youth, and adults. So from Ellis Dawn and all of our working family here in Edmonton, thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this event. And I will turn you over to these 2 ladies. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Barry. Get myself set up here. Okay, so welcome to today's Lunch and Learn webinar, More Than Just a Bad Day, Understanding Depression. Today's session is for anyone in the community looking for basic information and strategies for helping individuals of any age who might be experiencing significant sadness or depression. So my name is Aneesa, as Barry was saying, and I'm a health promotion facilitator with the Addiction and Mental Health Education Services team from Alberta Health Services in the Edmonton Zone. And my co-presenter is Cathy. Cathy, can you do a quick little blurb about yourself?
I am just also a Health Promotions Facilitator on this team, and I'm going to be joining you more in the second half of this presentation, so I'll see you then.
Great, thanks, Cathy. So just a bit of a reminder, the information in today's presentation comes from a variety of evidence-based sources, as well as from the professional experience of our team. It is meant to supplement and not replace any information or treatment provided to you by your therapist, doctor, or other healthcare professionals. So in today's presentation, we will review what mental health is, the differences between depression and sadness, signs and symptoms of depression, and then lastly, we'll look at treatment options and supportive strategies. And again, depression is challenging to go through, and it can be challenging to support anyone experiencing it. So as we discuss the symptoms and effects of depression today, please be reassured that we will end on a positive note that focuses on hope, healing, and resiliency. So with this, I have a question to ask everyone. Is depression just a normal part of life, Would you mostly agree or mostly disagree? Feel free to share your answers in the chat there. Okay, getting some answers pretty quick and fast. Give it a few more minutes or serving more moments. So mostly agree, mostly disagree. Yes. Perfect. Okay, so let's take a look at what the answer is. Okay. So if you think of depression as significant sadness, and if you were in agreement with the statement, you would be right. So temporary feelings of sadness are a normal part of human experience, and it usually reflects our response to a temporary setback or stressful event. So as time passes, the depressive response tends to fade away as we get busy and re-engage with our everyday activities, such as we can bounce back to good functioning within 2 weeks or less. If you disagreed with this statement, you would also be right. So sustained feelings of sadness or hopelessness for periods of 2 weeks or longer is not a typical condition, and it may represent a clinical depression that requires formal treatment by a trained healthcare provider in order to recover. It is the last description of depression that we will be discussing today. So sometimes it can be hard to tell where someone is with their lowness. Are they feeling distressed or nearing actual depression? So as noted, sadness is a normal emotion that we all experience at various times in our lives. Sometimes we might use the word depression to describe sadness or when we're feeling a little low or blue. So it is important to look for other signs to get a better sense of what is going on. So with sadness, the feelings usually reflect a setback or a stressful event that has occurred. The sad feelings will usually fade within 2 weeks. And these feelings will be temporary and sometimes even momentary. And lastly, we usually learn coping strategies to get back to normal and may even find ourselves more equipped to deal with similar situations in the future. However, when someone has significant sadness for a long period of time and it affects their overall functioning across different parts of their life, they may be experiencing a clinical form of depression, a real medical condition with a variety of symptoms. So with depression, sadness, irritability, and despair that can last for weeks or months or longer, it's more than just feeling down. It's where regular sadness usually occurs in response to a specific trigger. With depression, changes in mood may happen regardless of what's going on with the individual. Although depression can affect anyone at any time, it does seem to strike more often when a person is going through changes such as a loss in their life, times of transition, or an onset of an illness, which can leave a person to feel helplessness and hopelessness, or in other words, being stuck. The feelings are debilitating and the individual becomes withdrawn and isolated, often uses unhealthy coping mechanisms like guilt, self-blame, substance use, or self-harm. Depression will have an impact on more than one area of a person's life. These intense symptoms often require therapy and or medication to overcome. So here's a graph that illustrates the ways our moods can fluctuate. So the black line you see in the middle of the graph represents our baseline mood. For some people, it can be higher, and for some, lower. But we all have a normal by our own standards or suiting our own natural temperament. So for many of us, when we think about it, our baseline mood is something that is hopeful or positive. The green line represents our mood and how it fluctuates over the course of a day. So let's paint an easy picture of what that green swiggle may represent. So when I'm annoyed that I can't find my car keys, or when I hear of a sad story, my mood may dip a little. It may also go up if I finish a tough project or when I visit a loved one. So our mood continually fluctuates throughout the day, but it is contained within our individual highs and low boundaries, which is represented by the red line at the top and the blue line at the bottom. It's also normal for our mood to go temporarily outside those usual boundaries of our emotions. So let's say you get married or you receive a job promotion, you may feel happier than usual. It's kind of placing you above that red line. If, however, you lose a loved one or you're laid off from a job, you may feel more sad than usual, so moving you below that blue line. However, with a bit of time, you will usually return to your normal baseline mood. So clinical depression is when someone's mood is significantly below their baseline and they stay there. So without treatment, they will struggle to return to their optimal zone of functioning. So notice too that even with depression, one's mood will still fluctuate, as shown again by the green squiggly line. Some moments or days will feel better than others, but it is still not where they should be, or rather where they want to be. So how common is depression? So clinical depression is found in approximately 2% of children, 4.8% of teenagers. Then we see a big jump in the adult population with approximately 19% of anyone over the age of 18 struggling. So symptoms most commonly appear in teen and young adult years. And depression also commonly occurs at the same time as other challenges, including other mental health disorders such as anxiety, as well as substance misuse rather. This is often referred to as comorbidity or co-occurring. So in fact, about 20% of individuals struggling with depression also struggle with substance abuse, and an individual with depression is 60% more likely to also struggle with anxiety. So rates of depression are the same for those assigned as girls and boys during childhood. However, in adolescence and adulthood females, they're 2 times more likely to be diagnosed with depression than males. The reasons for this might vary. However, some researchers surmise that men often remain under the radar, expressing their depression in more external ways, such as an increase in aggression or risk-taking. Other researchers suggest that women are more likely to struggle with depression due to ongoing physiological changes that their bodies go through, such as puberty, pregnancy, and menopause. Around 7% of some of this depression, seniors may experience symptoms of depression, and about 1/3 of people with prolonged physical illness like diabetes or heart disease or other mental illness other than depression may experience depression. So with that, what are some signs that we might see in someone struggling with depression issues? So feel free to share your answers in the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on your answers. So what is some signs that you might see in someone who's struggling with depression? So somebody said increased, being solitary or withdrawn from their social activities, low energy, change in appetite, lack of interest in activities. Yes. Again, somebody mentioned that change in appetite, eating more, eating less. Yes. Feeling increased anger or frustration. Right? Indifference. Yes. Poor hygiene. Okay? So you're not taking care of yourself. That's also. You might be sleeping more or sleeping less. Yeah, so if you're seeing a change in sleeping patterns, that might be a sign of depression. Feeling more impatient. Yes. So you feel that person or yourself, you're just a lot more easy to get riled up. Somebody mentioned that they might be drinking more alcohol to self-medicate those symptoms. Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for sharing. So as you can see on your screen, right, there are a number of signs and they look quite varied and diverse. So again, that's something to keep an eye on, and everyone is different in how they show those signs. So coming back to that sort of normal or baseline, if you see a change in some of these signs, that might indicate that that person might be struggling with depression. So thanks everyone for sharing. So one of the most important things you can take away from today's presentation is to look at the patterns of change. So those times when you notice that something is different and it's not going away. So watch for changes in mood and thoughts, body and health. A number of you mentioned, hygiene and not sleeping well or eating more or eating less. And lastly, behavior, including impact on academics or work performance, or even within the relationships. Right? So looking for those patterns of change in mood and behavior. So the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, also known as the DSM-5, lists a few different types of depression disorders. Today, we're going to focus on the most common form, which is major depressive disorder. Okay? So sadness, irritability, increased aggressiveness, being defiant or argumentative with authority, being easily annoyed, emotionally sensitive, and reactive to minor difficulties or disappointments. They may experience feelings of worthlessness, right? Guilt, hopelessness, decreased self-esteem, negative self-image, negative talk about the future, negative self-talk, hatred, or sensitivity to criticism. They may also have thoughts of suicide or self-harm, as reflected through the verbal comments of dark themes, including in their work, schoolwork, or fixation on death. And lastly, loss of interest or pleasure in activities that a person may normally enjoy, right? Or withdrawal from previous commitments. We're also looking at a change in appetite. So if there's significant weight or loss, so more than 5% of body weight is lost in a month, problems falling or staying asleep or sleeping more than usual. If you're feeling sleepy in class, if you have, youth or children that you're keeping an eye on, that's something you can take a look at. Slowing down of thought processes or body movements that may be noticeable by others. And a lot of you mentioned fatigue or lack of energy. Of course, having difficulty concentrating or focusing, making those decisions, or having poor memory or lack of attention, decline in school or work performance, having difficulty completing tasks, and so on. So of course, all of us will experience some or many of these symptoms at any given point. This doesn't mean that we're all depressed. However, if we are noticing ongoing patterns of change in these areas, then we might consider the possibility of depression. Okay, so for someone to be diagnosed with major depression, they must have at least 5 or more of the following symptoms. So these symptoms must have a negative impact on the individual or on their relationships and activities. There can't be any other reason for these symptoms, such as another medical disorder like hypothyroidism, mononucleosis, anemia, certain cancers, autoimmune disease, chronic fatigue syndrome, and so on. These symptoms must be present for at least 2 weeks, but that doesn't mean you have to wait for 2 weeks to get help if you are really concerned. And like we have said, these symptoms should reflect a change from your usual or normal way of being. So when we look at how depressive episodes will reoccur, if left untreated, we see that up to 60% of those who have an episode of a major depressive disorder will have another one during their lifetime. 70% of those who have 2 episodes will have a third, and 90% who have 3 or more episodes will continue to have. Which speaks to the importance of early recognition and treatment to improve prognosis over their lifetime. So now that we've understood how depression is defined within the medical community, let's look at some other factors that can be linked to this condition. So, quick question for everyone, true or false? Depression symptoms look the same for everyone, regardless of age. So feel free to share your answer. Okay, coming in quick and fast. Give it a few more seconds. Perfect. So thanks, everyone. So a majority of you said false. So the answer is, well, it is false. In fact, depression symptoms can look different in children. So although symptoms of depression in adolescents and adults look similar, symptoms in children can look different, right? It can look very similar to anxiety or attention deficit issues. We can typically expect more somatic or physical symptoms like headaches and tummy aches with heightened irritability or crankiness. They may struggle to gain weight, but their sleep and appetite are usually unaffected. And their mood is not always sad or low, meaning they still show smiles and the capacity to play. So the key point here is that sometimes it can be hard to recognize depression in what we assume is simply a misbehaving or anxious child. So left untreated, depression may affect our emotional, cognitive, and social skills, which creates an increased risk for struggles in school or work, substance misuse, legal issues, and medical issues, such as diabetes and heart disease, as well as acts of self-harm or suicide. So 60% of those depressed also report having thoughts of suicide, and of those, 30% will actually attempt to take their own life. So as previously noted, individuals with depression are more likely to use drugs, alcohol, or cigarettes. And about 20% will develop alcohol or drug use problems along with depression. So many report they turn to substances, commonly alcohol, to self-medicate or alleviate their depressive symptoms. However, those same substances can actually cause symptoms to become worse, causing a vicious cycle that muddles the picture of what came first. Was it the alcohol substance use issue or the depressive disorder? It can seem like a chicken or egg situation. So whichever came first, right, the depression or the substance use issue, treating substance abuse alone will not eliminate depressive disorder. So it's usually necessary to treat both together, particularly to lessen the chance of reoccurrence or relapse. So with that, we're going to take a look at a video that sort of illustrates or provides a metaphor of what depression may look like. So let's take a look.
I had a black dog. His name was Depression. Whenever the black dog made an appearance, I felt empty and life just seemed to slow down. He could surprise me with a visit for no reason or occasion. The black dog made me look and feel older than my years. When the rest of the world seemed to be enjoying life, I could only see it through the black dog. Activities that usually brought me pleasure suddenly ceased to. He liked to ruin my appetite. He chewed up my memory and my ability to concentrate. Doing anything or going anywhere with the black dog required superhuman strength. At social occasions, he'd sniff out what confidence I had and chase it away. My biggest fear was being found out. I worried that people would judge me. Because of the shame and stigma of the black dog, I was constantly worried that I'd be found out. So I invested vast amounts of energy into covering him up. Keeping up an emotional lie is exhausting. Black dog could make me think and say negative things. He could make me irritable and difficult to be around. He would take my love and bury my intimacy. He loved nothing more than to wake me up with highly repetitive and negative thinking. He also liked to remind me how exhausted I was going to be the next day. Having a black dog in your life isn't so much about feeling a bit down, sad or blue. At its worst, it's about being devoid of feeling altogether. As I got older, the black dog got bigger and he started hanging around all the time. I'd chase him off with whatever I thought might send him running. But more often than not, he'd come out on top. Going down became easier than getting up again. So I became rather good at self-medication, which never really helped. Eventually, I felt totally isolated from everything and everyone. The black dog had finally succeeded in hijacking my life. When you lose all joy in life, you can begin to question what the point of it is. Thankfully, this was the time that I sought professional help. This was my first step towards recovery and a major turning point in my life. I learned that it doesn't matter who you are, the black dog affects millions and millions of people. It is an equal opportunity mongrel. I also learned that there was no silver bullet or magic pill. Medication can help some, and others might need a different approach altogether. I also learned that being emotionally genuine and authentic to those who are close to you can be an absolute game changer. Most importantly, I learnt not to be afraid of the black dog, and I taught him a few new tricks of my own. The more tired and stressed you are, the louder he barks, so it's important to learn how to quiet your mind. It's been clinically proven that regular exercise can be as effective for treating mild to moderate depression as antidepressants, so go for a walk or a run and leave the mutt behind. Keep a mood journal. Getting your thoughts on paper can be cathartic and often insightful. Also keep track of the things that you have to be grateful for. The most important thing to remember is that no matter how bad it gets, if you take the right steps, talk to the right people, black dog days can and will pass. I wouldn't say that I'm grateful for the black dog, but he's been an incredible teacher. He forced me to reevaluate and simplify my life. I learnt that rather than running away from my problems, it's better to embrace them. The black dog may always be part of my life, but he'll never be the beast that he was. We have an understanding. I've learned through knowledge, patience, discipline and humour, the worst black dog can be made to heal. If you're in difficulty, never be afraid to ask for help. There is absolutely no shame in doing so. The only shame is missing out on life.
Well, I, for one, found that video to be very helpful as it provides that metaphor of that black dog. What does that look like? He was giving his sort of history and, describing his relationship with this black dog. And two things that I took away was that shame and stigma, right? Rather than hiding that black dog away, I'm going to acknowledge it and bring it out, get some help. That's something that can be done. And again, that video is gave that metaphor of the black dog to say, yes, there's help out there. I can, get help. I can find that support, that there is that conversation to be had with your healthcare professionals on your care team. So hopefully that's been helpful. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Cathy. So Cathy is going to talk about treatment options and some strategies that you can use when you are struggling with depression. So thanks, everyone.
Hi there. One thing I like about that black dog video is when we have a hard time explaining what our depression feels like, if any of that video resonates with us, we can show that video. And it's just on YouTube. It's from the World Health Organization based on a book, I Had a Black Dog. And so you can definitely look at that and use that as a way to show others what you may be feeling like, or if you're caring for someone who may be struggling with what we see as the symptoms of depression, we could show that to them and ask them if this, resonates with them and start that conversation. So now that we kind of have a better understanding of how depression is defined and what effects it could have on us or on those we love, let's move into what we can do to support recovery. So here's another question, true or false? Depression can only be treated with medication. What are your thoughts? Put them into the chat. And I know that the video kind of gave a bit of that away, but yeah, everybody's putting in false, and that is correct. Yes, everybody put false, 100%, but I want to also point out here that medication can still be very effective and is evidence-based It's an effective form of managing depression, and it is evidence-based. It can really be a part of recovery for so many people. So a lot of times medication itself has a stigma. And we want to point out that medication, again, our depression medications are very, we know a lot about them. They're very evidence-based, and they are really, really helpful for so many. So for some people, it really can support significant improvement in their symptoms. And some people find that they might need medication for a long time, but other people might just need it for a short period of time to help them feel well enough so that they can access other treatments. So again, it could be helpful even in the short term. With depression medications, we want to remember that it can take 4 to 6 weeks for medications to start showing those positive effects. So it's really important that once it's started, it should be taken as directed, even if you're not feeling any change right away. With any medication, we want to closely monitor the onset of when we start taking that medication, we want to watch for any side effects or any changes in us from that, because we know that with everything, antidepressant medications, Tylenol, anything, medications can work differently with different people. And some meds, which are helpful for some people, might actually increase some of the feelings of depression or even suicidal thought or behaviors in other people. Individuals with bipolar disorder or a family history of bipolar disorder or a history of previous suicide attempts can be particularly vulnerable. So even if the medication doesn't increase suicidal ideation, that risk of suicide can sometimes be, if we're working with someone who had previous suicide ideation, the risk of suicide can be a bit higher during those first 2 months of antidepressant treatment. What happens is that the medication can quickly help increase a person's energy, but not remove the suicidal thoughts, which might give them more energy to follow through on suicidal behaviors. Again, these things don't happen for everybody. For so many people, depression medication is not just helpful, but it feels very essential to them, and it's the thing that made the difference for them. So if you notice, if you are on an antidepressant and have just started, or if someone else you're caring for has started an antidepressant medication, if you notice any symptoms getting worse, just talk with your doctor or a healthcare provider right away. And always, as with the other medications, continue to consult with your physician while that medication is in use. Let your doctor know if there's any new or worsening symptoms, and always, always talk with your doctor before stopping or making changes to your medications. So besides medication, there are other approaches that can treat depression, though often the best approach is to use a mix of treatments and strategies that fits each individual's needs. Options for treatment are really determined by a lot of different factors, such as the person's age, their cognitive development, the severity and type of depression, the frequency and duration of symptoms, if there's any other disorders present that are going on, and even things like our social and cultural environments, our personal history of trauma, and both our preferences and the physician's preferences. All of this can impact how we're going to kind of tackle this mental health challenge we're having. First, education and support really do go a long way in understanding what you might be dealing with or what someone you love is dealing with, and that can help us just to know what might be the best treatment for us. Whenever we're dealing with something like depression or any mental health challenge, it's also really important to rule out other medical causes, because there are other things that can give kind of depression symptoms like anemia, certain infections, thyroid problems, pregnancy, menopause, malnutrition. All sorts of things can bring up these symptoms that might be similar to a depression disorder. Also, psychotherapy for you or your whole family can be very helpful in managing depression with things like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, interpersonal psychotherapy, IPT, dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, acceptance commitment therapy, ACT. These are often treatments that are chosen towards supporting people who are suffering from depression. And also, that video that we watched mentioned exercise. Once exercise was just thought to be a complementary strategy, but now there's evidence to support that exercise may have some effectiveness in treating depressive symptoms. That said, we want to also point out it's not helpful just to tell someone who has depression that they just need to go for a walk, just get a little exercise. Statements like that can really be dismissive of a person's suffering and can oversimplify a really complex condition that often requires a combination of supports. We do want to really mention it here. It's one of those opposite behaviors. You know, when we're feeling depressed, maybe one of the last things we feel like doing is getting up and having some exercise. But when we kind of have the support to do that, it can help us to manage those symptoms. Now that we have a bigger understanding of how depression is defined and what effects it may have, let's move into what we can do to support recovery for ourselves, for our loved ones. The strategies that we're going to discuss are helpful for everyone, you know, regardless of what mental health challenge or we're having, but it can be especially important when someone we love is having challenges around depression. So exercise has been mentioned as an effective strategy, and just as our body needs to move to be healthy, we want to make sure that our other basic needs are tended to as well. We want to be consistent around things like sleep, healthy eating, and good hygiene. These things were mentioned, you know, when we asked you what were some of the signs of depression, that we're having sleep challenges or not, you know, our appetite is changing, our hygiene needs are changing. And so in these areas, we might need to provide support or get more support to make sure these things are happening. They're really, really key. We also want to try to reduce and eliminate unhealthy habits that could impact our wellness, such as smoking, drinking, or substance use. Whoops, one second. There we go. Or substance misuse, right? So let's, oftentimes we want a quick fix. These basic needs, though, are really essential. If we can turn our attention to at least tackling one area, right, then it's still what's going to make a difference. Sometimes we might not always have the energy to or the interest to address these areas, but we want to continue to make them priorities if we can. And also really celebrate the small successes that we achieve. You know, I know that it's January. We have a lot of New Year's resolutions. I'm going to tackle this. I'm going to do better. But again, we're going to go at a pace that works for us so that we can actually have some success. And you might want to focus on one area or just one or two areas to start with, some really small steps. Perhaps someone who's experiencing depression, you know, would not have the energy to go out for a run, but maybe you could start with a walk to go out and grab the mail, you know, just something that's a start. So we're just moving slowly, step by step every day. It can be also useful to access activities that we feel might help us to manage our energy and our emotions. So just being intentional about what do we think can actually help us to kind of cope better. So things that are often very helpful to people are things like having that connection to nature, going out in nature, getting some sunlight in the daytime hours. I know in the winter we have fewer daylight hours, so going out, in the afternoon when we have some sunlight. Listening to music, listening to something that's uplifting to us or soothing, depending on what we need. Journaling or having some creative expression can really be helpful to kind of ground people, connect them to themselves, help them to be in that place of flow that's uplifting. And engaging in pleasant hobbies or distractions. We know, of course, that when we're feeling depressed, maybe some of those things that were helpful to us before, that are engaging, we were interested in before, might not feel, we might not have the desire to do those things, but we still can make those efforts to try to still engage with those things. We might be surprised by the benefit we feel after. And of course, working out and yoga, things like that. We discussed how exercise is really important when we're experiencing depression and can help alleviate our symptoms. One other thing we can do sometimes if we have kind of depression, and we know that depression kind of goes through cycles, right? So we might have a time of depression, and then our symptoms might go away or might decrease, and then we might find that we're cycling back. When that happens, let's not be too discouraged. Let's recognize that is actually a part of depression. So with that, when we're feeling a little bit better, when our symptoms start to be relieved, let's think about what can I do? How can I plan for the next round if that should come? And so one thing we can do is build a coping kit. This would be like a box or a container that you would fill with items or activities or reminders, things that engage your senses, ground you in the present moment, and help you feel better. So we could have in there things like a coloring book, if that's helpful for you to do some really lovely adult coloring book. It could be some nice scents that really help you feel better. A nice candle, if that's something that you like, that makes you feel better. Some special teas that you can drink that help you kind of feel calmer. It could be some things that are give you kind of sensory calming, like some Play-Doh or some fidgets. You could even put things like a photo album of pictures of people that you really care about, or pictures of times where you really felt like yourself. You were doing an activity where you felt connected. So sometimes when we're feeling depressed, we forget who we are. We forget the blessings we have in our lives. And so maybe this box could have reminders of those things, of how far you've come, people that are around you that love you, things like that. We again, forget a lot of that when we're feeling depressed. So a coping kit where we have some of these reminders or things that can help us engage can be really helpful at times. It's kind of like an emergency kit when we're feeling low. Let's bring it out. Let's just start taking care of ourselves and remind ourselves that we need that care. In the same way, we can write down a coping plan for ourselves. I have a coping plan. We can, just write down for us, what do we know about, what are the signs that that might tell us that we're starting to feel depressed or get low again. Maybe in this coping plan here, it says, I start to ruminate about the past. I get stuck in the past, or I notice I stop showering. I notice that there's a lot of fast food wrappers in my car. I notice that I start snipping at my spouse, like things like that. We can start going, what are the things that tell us that maybe we're on the decline? And so those things we can write down so that we can start to watch out for them. Then we can write down, what are some quick things we can do that can help us just to change those patterns. So maybe it's about changing my clothes into clean clothes, every day, or when I get home from work, changing to something comfortable. Doing stretching or yoga every day, reintroducing that and making sure that we keep doing something that, that is good for our body every day. Or maybe we just remind ourselves that, when I have moments like that, I do find that just watching a funny movie or watching something that I really like can really help me kind of pull out of that a little bit. It's just time for me to have some care in that way. And then with your coping plan, you also think, who can I reach out to? Who can I connect with? Who will I promise myself I will try to connect with when I'm feeling that way? So maybe it is just talking to a good friend that is really understanding, or sharing with your partner that maybe things are feeling kind of rough right now. Talking with your doctor, setting up that appointment, because again, it can be depression. It can be other health issues that sometimes can have those same symptoms. So you might want to go and say, I'm going to get a health checkup or talk to my doctor. And of course, write down other important numbers, like maybe 24-hour helplines. So in Edmonton, we have the distress line. In Alberta, we have a mental health helpline. These helplines are there for us 24/7. So we want to make sure that when we're feeling really alone, we know that there are places that we can call just to connect with a real human, so that we can start to feel better. So that we know that we aren't alone. And so when you write this list for yourself, it's just a reminder, when I start feeling this way, when I've got tunnel vision, when I think I'm alone, when I don't think, I can't think of any blessings or any strategies I can access, all I have to remember is I have a coping list. I can go to this and check. Even in your coping list, you might write down reminders of, hey, this is okay. This is normal. This happens sometimes. We're going to get through this, right? So write yourself a note from your past, from a time when you did get through it, and that might be encouraging for you. You might want to keep this list very handy. You could keep it, in a drawer. You could keep it in your email box. You could keep it close by, and you might even want to share this with a friend so that they know how to better help you in a tough time. It's really important that we do stay connected to others when we're experiencing depression. And I know that's very difficult at times. We do, like that video said, we mask things, and we often seem very outgoing, very friendly when we're with other people. And then when we're in our private spaces, we become more withdrawn and isolated. But positive connection with other people is just a powerful coping tool that helps us feel that we are not alone. And it also, though it's hard, it does help us to stay connected and to other people who might be able to help us or notice things that we maybe aren't noticing. So again, we know that when we're feeling depressed, we might feel like we don't want other supports, or that we don't need other supports, or that other people wouldn't be able to help us anyway. And that's natural. We have to kind of challenge ourselves a little bit with that. And if we're struggling with mental challenges, we need supportive, compassionate connections even more than ever. So with that, I just want to ask the question, what are some of the ways that we can maintain positive connections with the supportive people in our lives? Again, it's not always easy. We have more connection than ever before, like on social media and stuff like that. But sometimes, especially after COVID, we're finding that, a lot of these natural connections just aren't there anymore. We have to be more intentional about building some of these connections or maintaining some of them. So what do you think? Put into your ideas into the chat. I see I've missed some chat. We'll kind of come back to some of those things. Somebody said to go for a walk with a friend and her dogs. Yeah, making a plan to see someone and walk with them at different times. Find a hobby or group to join, right? What I like about joining a group is that if it's a group where you're going on a regular basis, when you are not there, somebody might reach out to you and go, hey, noticed you weren't there last night. We want to try and increase the people who are kind of in our lives and can kind of provide some accountability, not in a bad way, but in a, hey, how are you doing sort of way. Pick up the phone and call someone, right? Again, doesn't feel like what we want to do sometimes if we're feeling depressed, but it's important that we do check and reach out with other people. Walk my black dog. Wonderful. Have girls' night. Meeting up with someone in person. Family game nights, family dinners, volunteering. Yeah, all these things. Yeah. Let's see what else we've got here. Sorry. We plan a besties trip a couple times a year, supplemented with FaceTime calls because we live in different cities. Yeah, actually, again, as we get older, it might be harder for us sometimes to maintain relationships or to build new friendships. So if we do have, current friendships, we might need to reignite them or be very, very intentional about making sure we have time set aside for those people. Yes, having a walk or a quick chat with someone. Find a way you can contribute to others, like be a snow angel, right? So again, it's been proven that we do get some good feeling for doing good for others. It helps them, but it also helps us as well. So trying to be intentional about who can I help today, either through a helpful task or word of encouragement. Read a book, for sure. That's again like a distractive activity for yourself that can kind of bring up your spirits. And if you join a book club, then you can do that with other people. So things like that. How can we connect with others? Visiting with seniors in our communities benefits both parties. It's a win-win for sure. Go out and make someone smile. Yeah. Go out and leave the distractive tech at home. It's very easy for us to be very involved in our tech, and I use tech all the time. I'm not down on tech at all. But when it becomes something that distracts us instead of helps us, we want to watch that. It becomes our default for regulating our emotions, when we're finished with the tech, we actually don't feel a whole lot better sometimes. It's important for us to have those face-to-face or in person or talking to someone, real connections. Okay. It is true that it was said in the chat, when people are depressed, they usually want to isolate. So this is one of those things where we want to have some of those encourage opposite behaviors. We might feel in our bodies that we want to isolate, that we want to withdraw, that we don't want to engage. And we have to push ourselves a little. What can I do today to challenge myself a little bit, do something that doesn't feel natural to me because my body isn't in that place. I'm not feeling in that place, but what can I do just to challenge it a bit? Thanks, everybody. I appreciate this. These are great answers. We encourage you to, again, be intentional about how you're going to stay connected to people, even in difficult times, and how we can support those around us to be connected. Okay, thanks everyone for sharing. We'll just clean these up. There we go. Thanks so much. Oops. So again, as we mentioned, we really want to have that face-to-face contact in some way if we can, that in person, where we can get all of the communication, hear our voices, the tone of voices, really just hear the pauses. Technology can really help us stay connected, and it definitely did help us through the pandemic. It can also be an unhealthy escape or a source of unrealistic comparison with others as well, which can often make us have more feelings of guilt or shame. But there's nothing like being in the presence of someone you care about and someone who cares about you. For instance, it might interest you to know that the dose of oxytocin or cuddle hormone that we get from sending a text to someone pales in comparison to the tenfold surge that we receive when holding someone's hand or getting a hug. So if you want more of that good feeling cuddle hormone coming in, we want to try for more in-person connections than simply through text or via email. Along with connections to those that are close to us, it's really important to get involved in the world around us. And this, again, may mean helping to arrange a visit with a family member or friend, connecting with a club or a group that shares our similar interests, or volunteering. Interesting little picture there going on. So we want to, giving back to the community, again, is a proven way to help us to feel more of our common humanity. If you're here today as a support person for someone that does have or you suspect has depression, here are a few tips for you to help you support them. Remember to be empathetic to what the individual is going through, even if you don't fully understand it. And also, we got to know that when we're working with someone or supporting someone who's withdrawn or maybe feeling some frustration, anger, loss of patience, we can easily get frustrated with them. Let's be empathetic and understand that we don't know what they're going through. There are probably reasons for some of what we're seeing in them and even how they're interacting with us. And let's try to be understanding. We want to know that depression is a very real condition. And it is very damaging when left untreated. So don't just wait and hope that that person's worrisome symptoms will go away. If you suspect that someone is depressed, you want to kind of trust your gut and share your concerns. I mean, we shouldn't be diagnosing the people in our lives, but we can tell them what we see, what we notice in them. So bring up your concerns in a loving and non-judgmental way. Even if you're unsure if depression's the issue, the challenging behaviors or emotions that you're seeing still may be signs of a problem that really kind of needs to be discussed. Again, not to blame or shame and not to make just like, we don't want to make sweeping judgments or statements. We don't want to say, yeah, you've got depression. We're going to say, I noticed that, you're not going out that much, or it doesn't seem like you've been showering as much as before, or etc. Tell them, just stick to what you're actually noticing. Keep yourself regulated as you go. Supporting someone as they manage depression, it takes time, it takes energy. It's not always easy. Try to check in with yourself. Stay regulated, stay calm, curious, compassionate, and regulated. Remember that depression symptoms can come and go. So people with depression, again, like I said, often cycle through more than once. So if you see someone having the symptoms of depression again, remember this is often normal and that you can help them to connect with coping strategies and supports that helped them in the past. Whether you're experiencing symptoms of depression or trying to help others, don't try to address these challenges all by yourself. Expect to need help and bring in other supports. Be prepared to talk to family members and friends or professionals, including medical and mental health professionals, to ensure that there's going to be comprehensive supports. If you're helping someone and they won't talk to you about what's going on, encourage them to talk with another individual. If there's someone else that's closer to them, another family member or friend, coworker, or independent mental health professional. The important thing is to try and encourage them to talk to someone, even if it's not you. Also, keep in mind that finding the right treatment and supports and strategies can take time and effort. We want to try to stay committed to the process, keep the communication lines open, keep track of things like the important appointments, document important information around any changes in symptoms, appointments, or treatment plans. Oh, sorry. And also, I just wanted to point out the advocacy piece. So if you're struggling with depression, you might need someone to help advocate for you so that you can get the right supports, or you can advocate for a loved one that you're supporting. The road of depression can be long and winding, but knowing that you have someone in your corner that can help can really make a difference. And whether you're experiencing depression or helping someone else through those symptoms, we want to make self-care a priority. We can't fill up anybody else's bucket if our bucket is empty. For us to be at our best, we need to ensure that we take time every day to do something to care for ourselves, and not just on days when we're struggling. And I want to point out, I know self-care is something that we talk about often. It's very kind of, fluffy sort of statement. But, you know, think about, like, really focus on what are your needs. Those needs could be everything from needing to go for a walk or needing to clear your head by having a shower, but it also could be things like needing to set new boundaries, attending to certain tasks that maybe you've left undone, taking some time off just to get your place clean. Self-care can mean a lot of different things. And so it's really about checking in. What do you need right now, and attending to it, and attending to it a little bit every day. Also, daily moments of gratitude have been proven to give us a more positive outlook. So be intentional about recognizing good moments in each day and the good things in our lives, even when times are really challenging. You've got to fight to look for the good. Remember that this is a marathon and not a sprint, that even small steps towards wellness can have a big difference in our symptoms over time. So when you do notice something good, notice a little progress, we encourage you to write that down. Keep track of those daily moments, no matter how small. Mental distress can create disconnection and isolation, but there are treatment options and effective strategies that can help, and our supportive connections can help bridge that gap and go a long way. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to stick around for a few minutes and answer any questions you might have. So please, if you would like to put some things in the chat, we can see what we can do. We are pretty much out of time here, so we'll go for as long as we're allowed. If your questions, of course, are very personal in nature, we encourage you to talk with a mental health professional or contact one of the numbers here on the screen. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Cathy and Aneesa. That was so informative. I'm watching, all the thank yous come in the chat. I think it's so important to recognize the difference between sadness and clinical depression. So that was really helpful for me. I loved the coping kit idea. I think that's such a great idea for those like dealing with depression, as well as those who might be looking for a little more self-care in general. So I really appreciated you bringing up that as well. Thank you to everyone who joined us for this session today, whether you're here live or if you're watching the replay. Please note that the replay will be sent to everyone who has registered. We had a few questions about that in the chat, so you will get the replay. You can watch it again, take more notes. Those who missed it, the replay will be available. And thank you again to our platinum sponsor, Ellis Dawn, for being here today and making this session possible. Our next Lunch and Learn will be in April, so stay tuned for a date announcement. We are still working on that. And then I just have a few notes from the Mental Health Foundation as we wrap up our hour and our last minute together. Just going to paste a few links in the chat for you. There we go. So we would really love to invite you to our annual fundraising breakfast that's happening next month. We're really excited to welcome Dr. Tracy Dennis-Tawari, the author of Future Tense, Why Anxiety is Good for You Even Though It Feels Bad, as the keynote speaker for our annual fundraising breakfast on February 27th. So Dr. Tracy discusses the emotion of anxiety rather than the disorder, and she shares practical ways to deal with this emotion that we all share at various points in our life. So this event is a hybrid event, so you can attend in person here in Edmonton, or for those of you who are all over the place joining us today, you can join us online on February 27th as well. So the link to register and learn more about the breakfast is in the chat. If you haven't already explored the Mental Health Foundation website, please go ahead, take a moment, review the resources available to us in Alberta on the resources page of the website, which is also in the chat. And you can also sign up for our newsletter so that you can be in the know for our next Lunch and Learn series and, be the first to hear when we actually have an April date. So still to be determined at this moment, but we do invite you to join the newsletter. And of course, we invite you to join the Mental Health Foundation community by becoming a monthly donor. There's a QR code on your screen. Oh, there's supposed to be a QR code on your screen, but there probably isn't because I forgot to share it. So you know what? We're going to skip the QR code and you can check out the link in the chat to learn more about joining the community and becoming a monthly donor. Lastly, if you have any further questions, please feel free to get in touch with us at info@mentalhealthfoundation.ca. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again to Aneesa and Cathy for sharing your expertise. I wish you all a beautiful afternoon, evening, morning, whatever it is for you ahead.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.